They aren't always great, but at least there's a process going through them.
Yeah, but in the last couple of years, like especially the last digital marketing event I attended, the challenge was they weren't most of them were not pitches. They did a good job at that, but a lot of them were not very compelling. And so then you end up, if you've got a vendor who's great, they're giving you sponsorship money, they're supporting the cause. That doesn't always mean that their message is going to be all that interesting, right? Or it's not innovative. So it's a challenge to manage that, and what it takes is effort. Yep. And if an organization isn't prepared to put that kind of effort out, they shouldn't do it.
I agree.
Right. I agree. And it's the whole pay to play challenge of these associations who are trying to get revenue, and even for profit ones. I mean, Focusrite, and I do a lot of work for them, but that's why I'm on this show. I'm critical of everything. The one thing I really don't, and Focusrite knows this, I don't like about the Focusrite thing is that the Innovation Summit is pay to play. Now, I don't blame them because they're getting $16,000 plus a pitch, and you start adding that up with 30 people, 35. That's real money, and that helps that show go right. Yep. And without it, they wouldn't have the production value. They wouldn't have a lot of stuff, right? So I completely understand why. But again, and Bob Offit and Norm Rose, who traditionally, run that, kind of the gauntlet of who gets in there, do their best job, but it is really kind of like a 1 to N list of the top 30, because it's hard to go, well, only 25 were really great, and here are the rest. So, and they coach these guys and say, you need to do it this way, and this is the best way to present your stuff. But again, some of these folks ignore them, and they get destroyed. And a lot of times they're up there because they're allocating out of their PR budget, right, to be up there to try to get some exposure, maybe get some funding, and they crash and burn. And most of the time they do a disservice business. And it's like, well, we tried to warn you, but you screwed up yourself. And I guess you got what everyone would have guessed you would have. So.
Yep.
The thing that confused me about the HEDNA conference this year, we didn't participate, but I've sat on the HEDNA board in the past life, so I'm pretty familiar with them. But they did a hackathon, which I thought was kind of out of the ordinary for HEDNA and not really part of who they are. They're not a technology organization. They're not HT&G. Right. They're not, I don't know. They're not whatever, but they're not technology. And they ended up not having a great selection of APIs. They actually came to us and said, would you consider giving us your APIs? But for what our APIs are really, they're very specific, and they're not particularly easy to work with. So I mean, just because of the types of systems they connect. So and it didn't look like they got much other than Snapshot.
Yeah, and actually, I don't. And to be quite honest, that was on Monday. I didn't participate in it. And I don't even know who won because I wound up. I think they announced the winners, when we were doing the prep and getting mic'd up for our session. So it didn't get a lot of high profile use. Yeah, I think again they're trying to be a little more. I think they're trying things which is good. I think they are trying to become more technologically oriented, which is good.
It does appear to be going that way. That's why I asked you the question: is have they changed much? Because
it's the convergence. Yeah, it's the convergence, and they need to understand. I mean, a lot of the folks certainly understand a lot of the legacy technologies. They certainly understand a lot of the industry standards. They understand the message sets and things like that. But to really take it to the next, to the next level, they've got to figure that out. And HSMAI is going through the same thing. They're merging their digital marketing council with their marketing council, which is good. Those should, as we said multiple, many times on the show, it's marketing. It's just there are new tools with it, so you shouldn't just go, oh, let's talk about just that tool set. You're doing a disservice to the whole, the whole span of it. But I can run through a lot of the. I don't know if you guys, the presenters, Valen. I think I sent you a copy of kind of my general notes on it, but. I kind of put them in order of what I thought were the best presentations in kind of order. Michael, the CEO of citizenM, was great. He was kind of the closing.
He's always a good speaker.
Yep.
Oh.
And he has such an interesting background. He was with Synixis, that sort of thing. And let me tell you a quote that I have never heard from any hospitality CEO. This is quoting Michael Levy's.
I can't wait.
SysNM. We hooked everything up to an enterprise service bus, so we have APIs to access the data and have built dashboards to manage the information. We are at 93% with clean data.
I saw that. So what does that actually mean?
Wow, he should have just dropped the mic at that point.
My understanding of what they've done is they haven't sat at the constraints of each of their vendors' siloed technology. They've required all of them to, as part of working with citizenM, you have to feed all data that you house via API to their service bus. And through that, they're obviously doing work. If they're talking about the clean data, that means they're not just taking the data. They're obviously matching it up, cleaning it up, putting a lot of effort into that. He's running citizenM like a well-oiled tech company. I mean, if you really look at what that is, if you look at some of the best startups who scale quickly, they can tell you the same exact thing. This is what they do. This is how you run a company for fast growth, is through transparency of all parts of the company. It's the only way you can scale quickly.
Right. And the that black box syndrome is a killer for the hospitality industry, and everything is black boxes. Right. They're surrounded by black boxes.
Right.
No, now they're white puffy clouds that don't talk to each other.
Oh, that's true. Exactly. Yes. And if you've ever tried to grab a cloud and get control of it, it's very, very difficult.
I mean, that's a singular approach that not every hotel company can replicate, right? Because you have to spend. Right. There's a CapEx spend there, so it's every annual you have to take a portion of your annual CapEx and devote it to basically the types of functions that an OTA would devote a part of its CapEx to, right? Which is servers and data cleansing, data management. Brands don't get paid for that in their franchise fees, right? And smaller companies don't build for that, especially the European companies don't build for that. I mean, he's an outlier. He just absolutely is an outlier.
And how does he do it? They own and manage their hotels.
Exactly.
Right. Gosh.
Right. So they're aligned correctly because they're hoteliers. Right. I talk about this all the time, that companies that are hotelier-centric companies can do a lot more interesting things to be competitive than companies that are not. And, in every level, there's companies that are not. And there's nothing wrong with companies that are not hotelier specific. I mean, REITs, oh my gosh.
That is a massive animal.
That is a big
He is. He's pretty close to 30 pounds. He's a big
Is he diabetic? My God.
He's just a big guy who.
It's all muscle, right, Robert?
He was feral when he was a kitten, and if he sees food, he will. He will eat it. Sort of thing.
So what I was saying though is, if you look at citizenM reminds me a lot of what I thought Kessler was before they sold, which is that truly interesting hotel brand that really thinks through the end to end. And it shows, and they the Kessler properties were always the most competitive properties in their markets without having to spend nearly as much to do that. And citizenM is the same thing. citizenM is incredibly competitive and problematic for their competitive hotel sets and their locations, and it's because they're hotel run. Now, not every hotel you're run, and that's why Marriott exists and all of that. But to do that, I have always been to companies like this, incredibly citizenM, problematic, because I think they're the purest location of because they're
absolutely. He said his kind of said, well, what's your key differentiator? And in most hospitality companies, you ask anybody else, they go, if it's a product like citizennm, well, here's our design. He goes, no, we've tried to create an environment where our staff is nice.
I think they're the purest
and that's the element of it. And he said our satisfaction score, because what's they do a lot of stuff with Review Pro, and they're using Review Pro score. And that's score is 92.4% of a level normally seen only by exceptional 5-star luxury hotels, and they aren't a 5-star hotel. They're just a great hotel group, and it's like, hey, here's what we do, and here's the design. Aren't for everybody, but we like it. Our staff is our customers like it. So yeah, that makes some sense. Exceptional 5-star.
I apologize for keep looking to the right hand side. I got chided on Twitter last week because I was not being responsive to comments that were being made in Twitter while I was doing the live broadcast, asking questions. So I have learned my lesson.
Not a bot.
I can never keep looking to the right hand side. It's just one of those question marks. But anyway, so I'm like doing this weathered eye over to the side, like, okay, because I was not being responsive. Yeah, I'm keeping an eye off. I'm playing Tech Geek right now, trying to make sure that if somebody says something, I'm going to say something back to them right away, so that there's no chiding this week when I come back and say, yes, yeah, we have a live show, but you don't talk to people. And I'm like, yeah, sorry.
Anyway, so can we go back to blockchain for a second? This is mostly for you. So, you know, Douglas Quimby from Focusrite put out a really interesting article. It was syndicated on Hotel Online, I think. But it also was in the FocusWire yesterday or this morning.
Yes.
And I think part of this is in response to Winding Tree's marketing message, which is that we take cost out. You know, so blockchain does, and I'm no expert here, but my high level understanding is that it can take some cost out of the back end, especially in the payment structure, and provide some fraud protection. But you know, part of Winding Tree's marketing message is it will help shift channel, right? So it'll change channel share,
right?
And I think I think their argument was that by taking cost out of it, hotels would be able to offer lower rates, right? And is that sort of Winding Tree's message?
No, well, Winding Tree's message, they got very aggressive, and Pedro's a very, very smart guy with a really interesting background. And
I want to be clear, I'm not casting aspersions on Winding Tree.
No. And I've been I have been very outspoken and critical of Winding and their messaging too, because they started out, and particularly Max, their CEO, is more of, we are going to disintermediate on just going to be blockchain. And it's like, whoa, hold on, cowboy. Yeah, there are a few things here, because they're basically discounting all the value add that those groups provide. So, you know, even the hoteliers at Hedna who are, you know, hating on the GDSs, it's like, oh, really? You'd rather have direct connect and manage all the defined viewership of who gets access to your rates and inventory yourself? You want to self-manage all those viewership tables? I don't think so. I've seen them. You can't control them. You're going to have distribution. You're flat out wrong. Same with the OTAs, because they'll say, well, look, the OTAs, we shouldn't be paying them 15% because they're just taking booking. Well, they're also spending billions of dollars on marketing to aggregate all that and the demand. So it's like, well, yeah, you're right. If they were just connectivity, and yeah, look at Orbitz. Orbitz outsourced all of its hotel platform to Pegasus. They didn't really have much of a hotel value add. Look at Travelocity. It highly relied on Sabre. Not a lot of value add. What happened to those groups? Oh, gee, they got fired. Sort of thing. So, you know, you've got to look at what's the marketing, what's the technology, and that's really is the bottom line of it. So,
importantly, the strategy. Because say what you will about Orbitz and Travelocity, they had a strong strategy for a good consumer approach, and that's why they've been left attacked. Is they have very loyal consumers, and you know, this is the thing that I find laughable, because listen, I've always been in the middle in the OTA hotel world. I've always looked at both sides. I understand angst of both sides, but the bottom line is the OTAs do a better job with customers than hotels do.
Well, and that's
because they know that it's worth spending on. Hotels could spend that too, Like Marriott could spend that. They have scale to be able to put the considerable expense into that, but they don't. So,
Right.
and they don't understand like what it takes to win a consumer. And that gets harder every year. So yeah, I mean, I say it every show that we talk about OTAs, but I'll be honest, and Valen, I'll ask you the same thing. If we had an entity, a reseller that could promise us that if we fell short a month on adding new hotels to our platform and we would just have to pay them a slightly thicker commission than we pay our own sales reps, wouldn't you be happy to have that? Thank you. I mean, that's the bottom line. I wish there was an OTA for B2B software solutions to hotels because, yeah, they'd be probably about 15 to 20% of my annual business growth.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Oh, and that's the thing. So the thing with Winding Tree, and the thing where I'm critical, is it is a permissionless public blockchain. Now Pedro will be the first one to say they want to do that for full transparency and everything, but you've got a lot of nuance in the hospitality for air and car and everything. And Valen knows how complex all of that is herding together, and probably still wakes up screaming at night in the middle of the night from nightmares of her open travel experience, right? But
I just want to ask the four of you.
Oh, go ahead.
Should the industry, like the hotel side of the industry, even be talking about blockchain? I mean, realistically, should it even be in their vocabulary?
I would say they should. They should know about it. It can be, and I predict it will be, not necessarily blockchain. And that's a distinction I made in my presentation, was it should be talked about as distributed ledger technologies.
Right.
I personally don't believe the blockchain is it, because now the blockchain is very interesting for cryptocurrencies.
Yep.
The way that Satoshi Nakamoto created Bitcoin. There's scarcity. There's this, mining process. It's this shared trust. Literally eliminating the need for a government overseeing a fiat currency.
Right.
Interesting stuff. But you don't want the whole world kind of going on consensus. And an example I'd use in hotels is, and Valen will roll her eyes at this, but I'm still a big proponent of having some sort of identifier for hospitality properties. Each property having a unique identifier, so it cleans up who is that? Who's the owner? Not at the brand level, the owner of the freaking hotel, so they can get control of their data and their distribution. Say, here's the real stuff. The Japanese steakhouse is now a sports bar, right? Stuff like that, right? These are the good pictures. So all of that sort of thing, I'm a huge proponent of that. Winding Tree doesn't have anything like that, right? It is just this, there's nothing there. They have a white paper. They proof of concepts. They don't have technology. They're just saying, hey, we've got this blockchain. You can do anything on it. And that's great. And yes, you can be securely lock this stuff down, but who is that hotelier? The Hedna conference was at the Sheraton Austin Capitol, right? Well, what happens when that Sheraton becomes a Hilton? Right. What about all those existing reservations? All of those processes aren't really envisioned by Winding Tree, and that's going to be the really rough.
And here's the thing: in a lot of the life of a hotel, how much of it can be improved by the value brought from having a distributed ledger?
Right. Oh no, and that's there can be huge.
Their overall business, it could really benefit.
Ultimately, it could be all of it, and people. Oh boy, I'm gonna get in trouble for saying this on it, but people can go timestamp this. It can hypothetically eliminate all the intermediaries. Now, again, the blockchain the way it is now, Ethereum can handle 7 to 15 transactions a second.
Wow.
Oh, gee, Visa can do 45,000, Sabre can do 120,000, and Amadeus in a lab can do 245,000, right? So a little bit of a scale issue there. It's not going to work. It's using massive amounts of energy because of the mining process, which is what creates this lack of centralized trust, right? This distributed trust, this consensus mechanism, that's not sustainable. That's just freaking ridiculous. But again, you can get other distributed ledgers.
But to my point, how much value is that really going to drive?
Right. Well, here's what can happen. You have things like corporations and all corporate travel that goes through, right now, GDS, well, maybe a switch, or something like that, some sort of channel management function. It goes through some sort of, generally for corporate, global distribution system, then through a travel management company, then through, to the corporation. You could clear the deck on that and go, no, here are our rules, here are our rates, here it is, and it transacts very cleanly. But you're going to need mechanisms to kind of set it up to have that go. And you could introduce very, very interesting, complex rules. You could say,
sure, but
yes,
thing,
you have a $200 rate
today with certain booking engines.
Oh no, right? No, and
the
you
value
don't.
Isn't the value the intermediaries are bringing today aren't the architectural value. It's the building of demand value. And distributed ledgers and distributed trust does not build demand. And that's the thing. Like everyone talks about the GDS or even channel managers or all these different groups as if their only value proposition is the architectural processing of the transaction, and that's like the smallest amount of the value they bring.
Right.
That's true.
That's exactly right. That was my complaint about Winding Tree's message was they said we affect demand, and they can't. They can't.
Right. Like in a vacuum on an island in the middle of a universe that has no planets, sure, they can affect demand.
Right.
But in reality, like Expedia's value is not their architecture or their ease of transaction. That is one of their value propositions in a sea filled with atoms of value propositions that Expedia brings. Sabre as a GDS, their architecture is like a bigger value proposition as a percentage of what they bring, but still is not the silver bullet. And quite honestly, if anyone's going to bring in this distributed ledger and bring value to it, it's going to be a Sabre or Expedia before it's a hotel. And they're going to do it for the value that it brings to them.
Right.
And then they'll market it as a value to the hotels. So again, I ask the question, should hotels even be talking about this?
And I would argue yes, because let's just talk about the corporate market. Sabre and a lot of those travel management companies are not creating demand whatsoever, right? All they are really doing is connecting the corporate, the corporation to the hotels. So if you can do that more seamlessly and get, it really comes down to.
But it's not going to be a hotel that does it. It's going to be.
It's business process.
It's going to be a competitive to Sabre that comes up with a better mousetrap that is more efficient and more secure, and then they're going to drop the pricing that they can drop by those.
Well, if they can,
but it's not going to be Marriott. It's not going to be Hilton who do that. It's going to be a technology company that comes in and does that.
Yes and yes, but here's the problem, right? With the centralized one, you're going to introduce a new product or service. It's going to be technologically oriented. You're going to use modern technology to reduce your costs to develop it and everything like that. And you're eliminating cost from it. That is your big advantage, right? You may not be driving huge margins, which means might not be as appealing to venture capital and investment and things like that, institutional investment for you, which creates a little bit of a problem, right? The guys with they're all hunting for guys with massive margins, right? And massive margins normally mean I have centralized control, I control these markets. So it's a very subversive sort of thing. And the guys who lose potentially are the real big guys who, yes, want to kill that. as well as the reason I said I get in trouble for it, the ones who are risk, the major hotel groups, are they providing enough value, or is it just, hey, how do I get my hotel product, my rates and inventory out onto some sort of general distributed ledger where somebody new can come in and you can get a new entrant at very, very low cost who can kind of plug into this technology, right? I mean, that's the promise of it. You can kind of get there. It's not going to be simple. It is not going to be fast, and a lot of legacy players are going to try to kill it. But the bottom line is, in many cases, Expedia isn't really creating demand for travel. They've aggregated all this hotel content. That's what Booking.com has, a lot of stuff. Airbnb has all this stuff. It's the travelers. It's how do you connect, really on almost a peer-to-peer basis, the true traveler with the true supplier, who should not be the management company of the hotel, should not be the hotel brand. It's the owner of the hotel, right? And that is really disruptive. And that's what the technology hypothetically can do. But again, how you get there.
Like, let's keep a record of this. Like, it won't. Buy a hotel, it won't. It will be done by someone who's not a hotel.
I disagree, though, because I think, and we can point at Valen for this.
Me?
Valen.
You're being dragged in, Valen.
Valen was a tremendous disruptor of the travel industry as a whole.
True.
She served as heading Open Travel Alliance. Those Open Travel Alliance, specifications allowed hell of us to something that previously was in completely walled gardens. You just couldn't get that stuff, right? But there was a specification, a standard that allowed that. I look at the blockchain. I think Ed, you and I look at it very differently. I look at it as a protocol. I look at it as almost more like TCP/IP and how the internet kind of worked, where it's like, hey, people. I mean, what we're doing now, broadcasting to the world, hypothetically. Well, maybe it's a subset of the world who. I think everybody tunes in, but I'm not. Lauren could tell us.
26 countries. 26 countries so far. We've been
well, there you go.
Being,
but that's freaking insane. But why is that? Well, a lot of that happens to be, due to Lord only knows what Webinar Jam's using. There must be some HTML5 or God knows whatever these produce. But it is fundamentally TCP/IP. I mean, the internet protocol allows that to happen. So blockchain could.
Let's talk about what's more realistic. Blockchain is going to. I'm not saying
distributed ledgers, I should say.
Yeah, but I'm not going to say ignore it. Right. I'm just going to say it's the thing that these hotels. If I hear a hotel say something about blockchain, I am not going to lie. It instantly changes the way I feel about the person I'm talking to.
Yeah. Okay.
Because like when I put a Bluetooth thing in, I put a little Bluetooth in.
It is the same exact thing when I see someone with a single Bluetooth headset talking in public. And the reason I say that, and I'm just going to be honest here, like you gave me the firepower I need. TCP/IP, where'd it come from? Mm-hmm. It came from the industry that benefited the most from that technology becoming widely adopted. The hotel industry is not the industry that will benefit the most from distributed ledger. So they should not be even considering being at the forefront of this, taking the beatings you take, because there's not enough to gain for them.
Right.
There's just not enough to gain.
Oh, no, absolutely. And that was actually my point, because I went last on this panel. So what I said was, hey, and this is not a currency alliance commercial, but it's a doing a fantastic job. What they do is, yes, they use the blockchain because they think ultimately, and not in a non-permissioned public, they might be able to do it. If there was a public non-permissioned blockchain that was very inexpensive, yeah, they'd use it, right? That would be great. If there's some Bitcoin is saying, fine. They'd do it from a financial perspective. But in terms of possibly a public permission blockchain, they would certainly do that. That would be fine. But when you look at what happens in exchanging loyalty points and acquiring, outrageously inefficient, black boxes taking massive amounts. If you want to go, work with somebody, I won't name the organization to completely denigrate them, but they're publicly traded. They work with about 50 organizations in the world. It costs 6 figures plus, probably $250,000 to implement. Large monthly fees, and they take a 15% VIG of every transaction. Mm-hmm. We are talking super high costs to make this happen. Currency Alliance, no secret, there's no upfront cost, there's no monthly fee, it's a 2% VIG, right? Yep. For a major U.S. airline we're talking to, we save them $60 million a year. That's real money. They go, we may want to look into that, right? Sure. And so that is disruptive. Now, how are they doing? Yes, they have modern technologies that they're using. They're using blockchain, but we are not Currency Alliance, or I should say I'm an advisor, so it's not really we. But what they are doing is they are using the blockchain to go basically aggregate the ledger, right, and then publish it periodically in batches. Not ideal, certainly not the purest idealistic approach of Winding Tree,
but better than the current architecture.
Oh no, we can do massive
but
numbers.
Here's the thing.
No, wait, hang on.
That usage is no different than changing from an SQL-based database to like an
NoSQL or to whatever, right? Or whatever you want.
It's no different. So here's the thing. Right. I don't hear hotels talking about how amazing database technology has become. Why? Right. Because it's not big enough. A vendor like what you're talking about can come to an airline and fix a problem to the tune of $60 million. That airline themselves could not justify doing it themselves sanely, right? Because it wouldn't be $60 million in savings. It would be far less than that.
And you need the network. You need the network.
And you need the know-how.
And all that.
And you need the strategy and the vision. And that is not in their primary business goals. So therefore, I don't want to hear people talking about it. I want you keeping track of
you're absolutely
things happening.
Okay. So for the record, Valen.
Let me finish the one thing. You're absolutely right. And so that's why for travel, it's not this non-permission thing. It is permissioned by organizations who are going to be more transparent with their APIs, more transparent with their really, kind of a form. That was the Open Travel Alliance. Hey, you can do this. And now guys go out and work on it. And that is kind of what Currency Alliance is doing, and realizing that they're actually being more of a bridge to these new technologies instead of just like, hey, we are the solution. It's like, no, we're going to make this stuff go, blockchain stuff or distributed ledgers, and they are not tied to Ethereum. Their architecture can then go, hey, we can pivot here, we can pivot there. They may come up with, and I'm a big fan, you've heard it here first, directed acyclic graphs. DAGs are great. I'm a big hash graph fan. But again, that's a proprietary technology. But that could be the ultimate solution. Sure. It does 250,000 transactions a second. Yep. But hey, that may be.
But again, just so it's not unclear to everyone.
Thing goes.
Do not talk about blockchain if you're a hotelier, because there is no way anyone who is going to convince their org as a hotelier to invest in blockchain for something to do with their business process, there's no way that will end well.
Okay, let's done.
And the hotelier is the only one.
You're the one that brought this in, so.
I'm trying.
Okay. You asked about it. Next thing you know, this is what
I did, and then it all got away from me.
I will say this:
Welcome to the live show.
But hey, let's talk about things you should be talking about. Let's talk about how to get your current architecture that's consuming facing into a respectable speed parameter, because you're killing yourselves. I don't know how to present your content in a way that matters to the people who want to transact with you. I mean, if you want to chip away at OTAs, write better content about yourself, because that's one of the ways they're getting you, is they are presenting your product better than you.
Absolutely.
You want to lower your costs.
I want to take that one. Because I have a prime example. I just finished talking to someone.
But we were letting Valen say something.
Oh, Valen, go ahead.
No, I was just trying to change topics, honestly.
Sure. But one more. You want to lower your cost of acquiring customers? how about you start having actual relationships with your travelers and not just spamming them with coupons when you need something?
Okay.
Like, let's find ways to fix those things before we talk about blockchain.
Okay. So for practicalities, I spoke with a very small 13-room property in Lake Tahoe.
That is small.
And they were looking at what they were trying to do. And they have great content. I mean, really, genuinely, it's a beautiful place. They have great content. He used to be a web designer years ago and has been stuck in time because his perception of his website is 6 years old. And so I was asked to go over and just talk to him a little bit about trying to your point, Ed, like, hey, what about efficiencies of getting your potential guests into your hotel or into your location more effectively because you have great content. And it turned into such a painful conversation because the perception of it is that he already had the product. He didn't need to change anything. And his content on the website should be self-evident. And his business comes from the San Francisco market. And I said, well, is any impact happening with the fact of the tragedies and the things going on in California that, oh yeah, we're expecting it to be a downturn. He's at 25%.
Parts of the United States.
There you go. So he's at 25% annual occupancy. And I'm like, okay, so that means half the year you're full and half the year you're not. Okay, that's great. So he's going through this process. Like, so I was trying to ask him to define his best guess based on business cycles. Like, what is your best guess during your one season versus your best guess versus the next season? Really just trying to drag him through the conversation. And it was such an ardent what I'm doing is right. I'm listening to you to see whether just for validation, not for education. Yeah. And it's just so frustrating because to your point, Ed, it's like create better efficiencies with what content you have by generating good content, but use it effectively to minimize the stress or the necessity of steps to create the transaction value that people are actually looking for. They're looking for you because they want to acquire something that you have. So make it as most efficient as possible to it, rather than thinking that you're right, they're wrong, they deal with what you give. And it was just this painful conversation at the end. I'm like, I can't really help you because you're not listening to what I'm saying. You just wanted to listen to if I was going to agree with you, and I'm not agreeing with you. I started with the idea that you have good stuff, and I ended with the idea that you don't know what to do with it. So to your point, it's create those efficiencies, you're going to do better business, period. It's just opening the funnel for it. So anyways,
so I'd like to hear your thoughts as someone who, obviously has been on many different aspects of this industry, but has also lived the life of the vendor. I mean, what are your thoughts here? I mean, when you hear someone talking about things like blockchain, you know what's wrong.
We're not getting there yet.
No, we're not going to talk about blockchain specifically, but I mean, okay, today it was blockchain. Name the other, hot topics. Big data.
Bots.
Yes.
Bots.
Chatbots, yes. I mean, listen, you've been around long enough to know that the core fundamentals are built like on the shakiest foundation ever. Should this industry not be more focused and more honest about fixing the deficiencies to just provide a good customer experience before going to the flashy distraction?
The challenge for me with the hotel industry has always been its fragmented ownership and operation structure. So when I was running Open Travel, I had visibility into air and cruise and car alongside hotel, and hotel always lost when you were comparing ownership structure and the franchisee operations structure. And that this industry will always be challenged because of that, and I don't see that structure changing anytime soon because there's just too much money to be made around the margin. And brands just keep moving. They keep moving towards asset light structure, which I've never quite. I mean, I get it, right?
Hey, it's worked for Wyndham,
right? I can see the numbers, but also it just in our customer set. I work for Nor1, full transparency, and I run a couple of our global accounts, and one is a highly franchised global hospitality company, but I'm also responsible for a U.S. only upscale account where all hotels are owned and managed. And guess which company is better at managing their customers, understanding their customers, and driving revenue through their various content platforms.
Right.
that asset light branding is just it's a challenge because hotels don't have the control that they need to be able to distribute content properly and to distribute it effectively.
Right.
Well, and I got to be honest with you, if I was a hotel owner of a brand that has recently gone asset light, I'd be renegotiating my franchise agreement because you gave up control to someone who was an expert in hospitality, who is no longer in the hospitality business.
Hospitality business. That's right.
They're in the franchising business.
That's right.
And, and that is something like, I think the problem right now is the identity crisis, the transition of these orgs from being hospitality specific franchise systems to franchise systems.
Right.
And, that transition has not gone great for all of them. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. It's not gone great for all of them. And it's happening at a time that other things are becoming more impactful to hotels, i.e. the OTAs are gaining ground and, owning the customer. You have Airbnb as a new player in the mix, creating, for the first time, what used to be the quiet hum in most markets, these available vacant homes that if you were savvy, you could find. They're now being presented at the forefront. Right. So that's sharpening, competition. And then, oh, by the way, the overall shift in consumers' ability to, first of all, learn anything. You can learn anything. You just have to know what you want to learn, and you can learn it, and that's problematic for a lot of different parts of business. All of this perfect storm is a big problem for hotel owners who are franchised in a system that is no longer what it was when you franchised, and isn't in its perfect state yet. Will they get to their perfect state? Well, yeah, they're going to have to, or they're going to end up going private. They'll,
right.
pull back that public offering, and they'll become something else. But the bottom line is right now, today, if I was a franchise holder of one of these brands that has recently made the transition, I'd be renegotiating what I have control over. Because
they are. They're going to the soft brands, right? They're negotiating from the full-blown branding, and mostly soft brands are just a discount in the. One is a tremendously lower exposed signage and all the other ones of, hey, we've changed our corporate identity and sorry about that, but it's going to be a couple $100,000 for you to go change all this around your hotel. You eliminate all of that and you get most of the most of the benefits.
Right.
Generally a shorter term deal.
Right. And if you get a half a dozen great reviews on TripAdvisor, you're set, right?
Yep.
And so
for that matter, you can pay yourself on top if you want to these days.
Right. And so,
have you guys seen that video of the guy who created the #1 restaurant in London?
London.
That was excellent.
That was fantastic.
Actually, RJ Friedlander gave a great little thing. They had like a state of the industry thing, and he did a little case study of the Aria Budapest, which is Library Hotels Collection one, of what was going on, and the hockey stick that occurred when they were ranked the best hotel in the world by TripAdvisor. It was just like, oh man! But again, they did all the things to operationally to deserve that, or at least be up in the, maybe not the bad, but up there in the the upper echelons. It's like, that's what resulted in the reviews, and then that was the outcome of.
By the way, I don't know if you guys know, and I haven't seen Tim to congratulate him, but one of the hotels that he is very involved in and plays the role of their CTO.
Poor Tim.
They got the #2 luxury hotel on TripAdvisor in the United States.
Wow.
Which is amazing because it's like a
Wentworth Mansion.
Yeah, it's a 20-something room hotel. So congratulations to them, because holy smokes, the scale it takes to have the visibility to get top ranking, some of that is scale. You need enough guests going through to rank. So a small hotel, to have a small hotel hit that, it's amazing.
Right.
Sure.
And that's just full disclosure, that's why Tim's not here. Not stopping stream publicly. We're getting him professional assistants to help him because they were not number one, and he's been apologizing to the client. He's resigned from it, but they're trying to.
It's
keep
amazing.
him.
Yeah,
So I wonder what would happen if one of the OTAs started offering reservation services to a hotel.
Thank you.
They already do.
Well,
Booking.com
does.
Right.
Booking Suite.
That's right. Yeah. So Booking Suite is undergoing some transitions now. You know, they bought. What did they buy? What was it? What was the company they bought to form Booking Suite? It's been a while now.
Well, they bought like 3 of them.
Hotel Ninjas.
The web company though. Who was
right.
the web?
Yeah.
So it's gone through. So Booking Suite, they sort of conglomerated all of their acquisitions into Booking Suite. You know, it's sort of been a couple things. It's taken us a couple of small pivots, and now they're sort of ratcheting themselves back up again. But that's where, especially, and of course with Booking's penetration in Europe, I can absolutely see them throwing a wrench into the strategic plans of brand penetration in Europe, right? Because if you're a especially in Europe, right, you can look across to the States and see sort of the wasteland that is, you know, the franchised brands here in the US. If I was a hotel owner, why would I want that?
Actually, I'm typing that. I'm actually typing that statement because that is a clarity of statement as to how I also see the brand field right now in domestic.
Now, again, to be fair, we're all looking at this as the lens of a independent hotel owner. If I'm a real estate investment trust who wants my portfolio of real estate assets to perform without the need of an MVP, then I get the brand model for them. I get,
I would contest that.
Having an independent management company and a flag will guarantee that you will stay within this range of asset performance. Right. Even if you have crappy employees, you will rise above it. Right. And as a portfolio, like as someone building a portfolio to sell to investors, I get it.
Right.
So but you'll never be the number one or number two hotel.
And you shouldn't even try to be.
Right.
No.
Well, no, but to that point. Your exit, hang on, just one quick thing. On the exit, though, you're selling generally underperforming assets that somebody else can go grab and do better with.
Right.
So, that's great.
Right. But here's a thought to this process. There's a maturation that's going on in our industry for technology, regardless of our industry's adoption of it. Most of the brand fundamental value concept for this, other than the financial opportunity to actually begin your first build, because if you, as you pointed out before, Ed, by having a brand behind your build, you get the financing sometimes or most of the time because of it. What's happening now is brand. Always. Brand basically brings to the table that they are bringing the opportunity for you to function as a business better because it's brand in a box. It's booking system, it's its marketing system, it's brand recognition, it's brand mark. It's about getting business in the door to facilitate the business that you're building it for. A lot of things in market now are getting to the process that as a independent or I don't need brand, you can build yourself. They're finally getting to the point where the money's been made and now there's people coming underneath the brand solution process and saying, no, I can connect those APIs. And now your booking agent can work with your online system and can work with your CRM system because I am building these connections to it. It's still a cluttered mess, but it's slowly getting where now an option that's beginning to come out of it is like, and you pointed this out very well, Colin, is that brand, it's a wasteland of comparisons that I'm the same and in the same market with somebody else I'm compared against. Same tier, there's brand saturation in market. Now because of mergers, there's brand competitiveness, it's now frenemies, there's all this stuff going on that maybe just being who I am as a property in the location that I'm at, without the brand recognition, I actually can identify myself better using these that have come to market in the past 2 to 3 years that never existed before. So maybe I don't need to be that brand anymore. Right. And to that end, I think that's some of the questions that are coming into some of this. You can
create new hybrids of entities. Like I think Benchmark is a good case study. Benchmark, who kind of was a management company, is now a really interesting hybrid to the point where they just got like #1 management company by quality or something. But more interestingly, they've put together this grouping of independent, interesting properties that are now well run and have a good tech stack behind them with a vision. So now you have you have room for players like that to come in and build a collection, a mini brand, a Kimpton type, level. And so, and now you are seeing, like, I was looking at the last, like, top 25 REITs. There are a couple REITs in there that their entire collection is non-flagged. Right. And I was blown away that in the top 25 that there are now asset collectors that are collecting these assets of non-flagged, truly interesting properties that stand on their own, and are bringing in the best management companies to manage them, because you are, I mean, to be fair, with a Marriott, you can kind of erase history by just changing over your staff, and not move it too much outside of this threshold. But an independent hotel, your staff is a huge risk or opportunity to the value that the hotel puts out. So I get it from an investment grade perspective, why brands matter and why the stakes are so high. But when I think through someone, if I owned a hotel or 10 hotels that I could operate, I don't ever see how I would, knowing what I know, I don't see how I would ever be able to make the decision to go with a flag. Now, that being said, an Autograph or a Curio, heck yeah, because that's having your cake and eat it too. You have a lot more freedom of an independent hotel, but you get to milk that loyalty program. And I get that. I get that 100%. Right. But yeah, no, I don't see, I just don't see it. And
that's one of the areas where there's maturity to market too. The membership and loyalty value, there's now systems in place that says, even though we're one entity, we can provide value because our loyalty is tied to something that allows you to use it in multiple ways, where before there was no such platforms. Right. I mean, there's like the Plenties and so forth out there that are combining their resources, so to speak. So.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, that was fun.
Tiring of that. My God, do not mention the B word. Just don't talk about the B word.
We're done with that. I'll never bring that up again.
Mr. Roberts, since you put a list together, we never get to it. Throw another one out there.
I think with the HEDNA conference overall, just the better speakers. They had the head economist and VP of data science for HomeAway. Really good. Justin Rao. Wow. I mean, you start looking at what HomeAway has been doing from a data science perspective. Now they've got Expedia behind them. Who
is data science heavy? Like Expedia is fantastic.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And they are crushing it. So, he had some really interesting. He had a couple models. One was San Diego, and one was another smaller community. That was really more of like a beach destination, very, very high vacation rental, versus San Diego, which is obviously much more mixed. Do the San Diego one here. San Diego short-term rental market. So they're projecting 40% demand growth for short-term rentals, because they're out buying the Airbnb data, right, from AirDNA or whoever produces it, putting it together with theirs. They've got all of Expedia's data about this stuff, right? So they are figuring this stuff out. 40% demand growth in 2018. What's interesting is hotel occupancies continuing to increase despite all this massive supply growth. And here's Seth back here, our other cat, Valen. I don't know if he comes in. He's kind of my short-term rental specialist, as opposed, Kelso is the blockchain expert here. So that's kind of how the secrets of how Rock Cheetah is structured. But then the really interesting thing was the compression of the gap between peak and off-peak rates. That this, all of this short-term rental stuff is compressing that, and that is a problem. This dynamic supply is a huge issue for all the hoteliers who are relying on, if they're on their legacy revenue management systems, they have a real problem of predicting what's going to come in. They need whole new signals to start. Right. And I know Ideas is certainly working on that, and I assume Duetto and Logic and the other guys.
Again, I'm just going to say, if I was a hotelier, I would be trying to understand why. Why are people being drawn to these rentals? And then see how I can alter my product to capture the easiest to capture consumers. And I'll give one. I gave it a fun little LinkedIn post. I have recently found hotels that have answered the number one reason I was open to Airbnbs, which was there was not a room type that fit the type of travel I was looking for when I travel with my family. Until I found the Wyndham Grand in Bonnet Creek, which has a beautiful king suite that has this thing that looks like a closet without a door that has bunk beds in it. My kids love it. It fits in the footprint of a king suite. I think it's a great product, to the point where I only live 35 minutes from Disney. We've now stayed 6 times at that hotel. We recently were up in Boston, the Omni Parker House. Oh my gosh, this room. And I love what they did. They took a room that would be a #1 complaint room on TripAdvisor because the view was horrible. But you know what they did? They combined 5 of their rooms that all looked into what's basically the bottom of a AC system was most of the windows.
If you want to watch the HVAC and really understand how that's working, it's good engineer, either for engineers or maybe families.
They made it
the most family-friendly room I have ever seen. The kids area was 2 rooms in size, square footage, because the Omni Parker House is an old hotel, so their 2 rooms is still would be a small room. Had bunk beds, a chalk wall with chalk, had a little Nintendo Wii set up with some games, had toys and costumes, then had a little living area, that was like directly open to that, and then had a separate room that was a king bed and, all of that. All of these rooms' windows were useless. It didn't bother us in the least because they created a product that just delivered so high on our need that we would glaze over the thing that would normally murder them on TripAdvisor.
Absolutely.
And I'll tell you, like that fun little LinkedIn post I did is one of the farthest traveling LinkedIn posts I've done. And the comments on it have been these hotels that have answered this need of this type of travel, because I'd rather stay at a hotel. I want to know that there's quality in the mattresses, that there's, services around me, that it's in a neighborhood I can walk and get other things. And you generally aren't getting that in these individual homes or apartments and things like that, depending on what market you're in. But so that's something I would say. If I owned a hotel, I would be trying to understand what consumers are up for grabs. What consumers will go hotel if the hotel offers something close enough to the product that sways them to go to to houses. Right. And I would be trying to figure out how to take a part of my inventory and answer this challenge to really kind of beat this down, because I'm not price sensitive. I mean, the Omni Parker House, I thought it was a huge value at $170 to stay there, because
January, right? Boston in January.
Yeah, but there was a convention in town. I mean, here's the funny thing. Their standard rooms were more expensive.
Right. Yeah, because conventioneers don't want the room that you had.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, so we see that too. We have a hotel customer in New York that has the same. They have, it's an old building. Bottom floor faces the super dark courtyard where the backs of other buildings all overlook all their HVAC systems. Mm-hmm. So, and we have an upsell. How do you upsell that? Well, this particular property figured out they bundle in basically premium Wi-Fi and breakfast. So if you book a basic room type, the hotel basically uses our system as a way to better balance their house. Because they take that really awful room with no view, and they package in stuff that has value to travelers, and then upsell that. And that's the hotel being really creative, just like the Parker House. Right, exactly.
Into understanding what makes the consumer happy, mad, what motivates them, what doesn't, and what kind of trip you're having. Because if it's my wife and I want a view. Okay. But when I'm with my kids, I want convenience and I want them to be happy more than I want a view.
Right. That's right. Yeah, it's understanding it's not only understanding your customers, but also understanding your inventory. So what do you have, right? What do you have? What's a problem? What's the most desirable, but what's the least desirable as well? And what are you going to do about that that's the least desirable? Because you can always upsell your best stuff. You can always sell your best stuff, but you need to be able to sell your worst stuff too and deliver an experience the guest wants and that the guest likes, so you don't get slammed on TripAdvisor.
Right, because you don't want to lower the value of your good stuff.
That's right.
Because your overall ratings are poor. So how do you take your challenges and turn them into an asset? And I'll tell you what, the Freedom Trail room at the Omni Parker House, if you want to go stay in an awesome room with kids, that room is amazing. But guess what? Worst view you'll ever see. I didn't care.
Right.
Yeah. And that's the whole point of it is, so they don't. Chip Conley, when he did Joie de Vivre, was the king of that. He took these dumpy, neglected apartments and just had chain link fences and they were eyesores, and turned them into like cool little. And it'd be like, I think that's kind of interesting, and we're in Santa Clara or something like that, and. But that's okay. They figured out how you kind of got value. They kept the price down. They made it a little unique, and they provided good service and everything you want. But you really need the check to kind of get the owner, the management company, and the brand in that case to kind of do that. In Omni's case, again, a little bit more streamlined. They're managing the hotel. I believe they manage that hotel themselves. Yep. And I don't know if they own it or not, but again, they can kind of do that. And again, it's not like, oh, no, that violates Omni brand standards. And the last thing we want is a guest going in there and wanting the cool kids room at another place and we don't have it. Oh, no, don't do something great for the customer. Let's be a brand standard. Or your poor Marriott who cannot confirm connecting rooms even in your reservations across any of their properties. And that's what Starwood is migrating to. And I don't know if Starwood even did that before. I don't think they did. I don't think I ever even saw that option. But that's like, come on, guys.
That's some of the simple things you can control to push back against.
Absolutely.
This market. And so we talk about the simple things. So I sit here and blast for talking about the B word. Here's some simple things. Fix your ability to confirm adjoining rooms, and you will get dug into less by the Airbnb market fighting for families. Because I'm sorry, I have a 3.5-year-old and a 7-year-old. They have to stay near me, but I don't want them in my room.
No, hey, Ed, you have to train independence. You guys can be on floor 15. If they're on floor 8, they'll be fine.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Just tell them, you just have to lead them, especially, if they're 3 or so. You got to kind of show them where the elevator is, maybe have someone help them reach the button. Yeah. But then tell them how many, and it helps them learn numbers of the different floors. Yeah. Come on.
Right. Yep. So this kind of goes back to the Citizen M conversation of understanding, using technology to understand your inventory, but also to sell it correctly. Mm-hmm. And with a lot of the legacy CRS and PMSs out there, hotels are hamstrung, right? They absolutely want to manage their connecting rooms, but they may have technology that just doesn't allow them to do it.
Yep. And shame on you for not being the jerk customer who makes your vendor do it. Yeah. Those are my favorite customers, are the difficult ones, the ones who care so much that they're annoyingly adjusting my plans, because those tend to be the customers who make products better. And like every hotel should be pleasant, all right, because don't be a jerk, but should be holding your vendors to a higher standard than you're holding them to. Because I have news for you. Everything is possible in technology.
It's just time and money.
Yep.
I actually, to that point,
that's the problem. Go ahead, Lauren. Lauren hasn't said much.
I was going to say is that to that point, I have found a new purpose of why consultants have value. I found out that more and more times we're just actually being able to make the client, the hotel owner or ownerships or whatever, know what questions to even ask. because I think that's what's kept them silent for, in some cases, is that they're waiting to be told what is the capabilities of what they've purchased and not being told what they need to ask of the capability opportunities of what they've purchased after they already have. Because so many times the vendor who provided the service, for no intent or not, but I'm not trying to say they're malicious to this, aren't really trying to push that they're going to work harder for them. They're trying to push the fact that they get paid for what they gave them. And if you don't ask the right question, you don't get the product value.
Right.
So getting as working with properties and saying, hey, look, did you ask them to do this? No, I didn't know it could do that. They know they can do that. They just didn't say we can do this.
Yeah.
You know, so,
Part of my job is we get a lot of companies come to us who want to integrate with us. And so my job, I'm in the position of filtering through all that stuff. And it comes to me, either they come to me directly or they come to one of my colleagues and then it gets filtered up to me. And oftentimes my colleagues will say, oh my God, I just talked to the best company. They're going to they're going to solve all of our problems. They have all the right answers. And I'll say, so tell me the extent of your conversation with this. I mean, it's basically another vendor. Tell me the extent of your conversation. What did you ask them? What do you know? And I'm the one, and they'll say, I didn't ask them too many questions, but everything they told me is perfect. Like,
Yep.
Right. So I'm just like, okay, bring them on. Just bring it. Just send them to me.
Oh.
We'll vet them for you that way. Yeah, exactly. It's like first date. I only talk about the good stuff. We don't talk about the bad stuff.
Okay, we can go to a few other head.
I like the sandal story. Let's do the sandal story. That's a fun, uplifting story. Sandals making good on a 25-year-old voucher.
Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah. Actually, before I forget, though, one more thing from Hedna. There, maybe Lauren can go post it in the show notes. But Dr. Peter Stone, who heads the computer science lab at University of Texas Austin, was there, right? And you guys might not be aware, there's a challenge called the Robo Cup, which is robots playing soccer. And he showed some videos of where they started out not so good. They're still not so good. But the goal of the Robo Cup is that the robots will beat the World champion soccer team by 2050.
2050.
2050.
That's 32 years away.
Yeah, but that's their goal.
Right, and the current champions will be.
No. At the 20. Exactly.
It's the detail. The devil's in the detail of the statistics, right?
Yeah. But the only
half of them will be dead. The remaining ones probably.
Those are the easiest ones to play against.
Right.
But the best thing, he gave a great presentation, but the best thing was they did a massive amount of work with driverless cars. And so he showed the intersection of an animation of the intersection of the future with these, autonomous vehicles going through it. And it's like, six. And it just looks like it gave everyone heart palpitation. Everyone was just stressed out watching, these little dots spring around. And he said, well, no, actually, he goes, there is something here. He goes, like, that's every intersection in India. Because, right, they don't have lane, they don't have stop sign. Everybody's just crossing wherever. But it was freaking scary. But anyway, yes, we should talk about the sandals story, the good news story. There was a guy who they went to Sandals in like 91 or something like that. It was a while ago. And they went, and there was a little bit of problem. Sandals did not do a good thing to them. They landed at Montego Bay Airport. Sandals goes, hey, I know you're booked at the Sandals Negril, but we're sold out. You're going to stay down at Dunn's River Falls, which was a much less desirable property, not the same thing as Negril, which is
still wasn't in full hard open. They were
not completely open. Yeah, soft opening, construction, all this stuff, and it's like a couple rooms. I think it was 2 or 3 couples, maybe, I'm not sure. They go down there, and it's horrible. And that night, they go, wait, we're supposed to be here for a week. We are not staying. You're either putting us in the grill or you're sending us back, because this is not a non-starter. So Sandals goes and realizes, okay. Found rooms in the grill. Hey, how did that happen? So they went and did that, but then gave them vouchers and said, hey, you come back on us for a week. Here. And it normally expires within a year, but we're going to scratch through that because they probably said within a year. Well, I don't know. We may have plans next. Okay, we'll just scratch that. That's fine. The guys lost the vouchers. but right? Then like, gave them vouchers. Now, said, in my case, I probably would have called Butch Stewart's. Well, not Butch Stewart's office. Called into Sandals. It would have gone to Butch Stewart's office and said, "Hey, they lost it. Yeah, we got records of it. We got a carbon copy for here. That yeah, we did it." But they didn't do that. It just sat for 25 years, and they came back, and I think that children were one of the children was on their honeymoon. And
Robert's story short, they found their voucher.
They found the voucher. but no, it's important. It wasn't even them, though. And these were non-transferable. It was their kids, right? For this honeymoon, they go to Sandals. Sandals looks at it and goes, "Yeah, sure."
Yeah, that's kind of amazing.
And the story, it's like they did the right thing.
That 7 nights every right they gave to the kids for free netted millions of dollars in public,
I mean, we're talking
positive experience.
Yeah, exactly.
With the world, 26 countries now knowing Sandals is great.
That's good training, good empowerment of your employees to make good decisions that then really worked out well for you. So kudos to Sandals.
Exactly.
And Sandals owning, managing, and everything having the brand. That's their thing.
Good empowerment of your
and they could do it. If you did that in the traditional, franchise scenario, management company.
Kudos to Sandals. Well, no, because that was cut when a different management company was involved and it was out of their expense log, and so we're not them. We can't take that expense.
And the easy route for Sandals would have just been to say, 3 or 4 words.
Well, no, because that was cut when a different management company was.
Oh yeah, they could. And you figure how many times
that's the easiest thing to do.
Yeah, but and if anything, I'm hoping that this is a testament that for hoteliers that are watching this, that even the simplistic denials of service that you're giving your front desk does every day, where I'm sorry but we're booked, or I can't upgrade you today, or I can't take care of whatever request you have, that if they can be not teaching moments, not learning moments, I don't know whether there's a phrase for this, but they're referable to your staff by, if you do the right thing, even as for something small, then it creates a culture of hospitality again, where you can solve a lot of your own disparities of how people comment about you on the social platforms, or how they try to leverage their comments on the social platforms as to saying, I'm going to say bad things about you because, you didn't give me my free bottle of water or something. But if you try to provide quality service and you allow these variances to policy to exist and point to them and say, we're in to make sure that our guests are satisfied with our service, then these things can build bigger things. And it doesn't have to be as dramatic and as newsworthy as, a 25-year-old voucher, but it can be pointable and say, if we do these right things, people will see us in the light, and we might be the #1 library hotel for quality in the world. You can build to that point, honestly, I guess.
Yeah. So I liked that story. That was a good story.
That was a good story. I'm intrigued with the story.
I like the story. Airbnb IPO was ruled out in 2018. Their CFO is out. But the real story is Airbnb wanted to have a chief operating officer position, right? That was kind of the new thing. The CFO wanted it, and I think their head of operations wanted it. And they decided they went with the head of operations. It was a woman. Outrageously capable, not that the gender should make any difference, but she was great. But the CFO was a hot guy who was going to be kind of there. He was going to be the ticket, or at least he certainly thought the ticket to the IPO, right? Because he had a bunch of experience and kind of on rails. And this looked exactly, this scenario is what Sabre went through when they overlooked Kathy Masunas and put in Mike Durham, who's the CFO of American Airlines. He certainly thought it would have been a totally different direction for their win. Sabre made a kind of horribly bad decision by overlooking Kathy and Natalie. It's like, here's the guy, and we're going to go public, and that's the route. They made the right decision, and that gives me, it's like when companies are making decisions like that, of putting off their IPO with that kind of firm and their kind of backing to go, no, this is the best person. This is what we're doing. He's not our guy. He's just in to do this, out. Watch out. They're doing things right.
Yep. Well, and also, the bottom line is they're in transition. You don't want to go IPO when transition is on the map. They have more to do before they either need to freeze for a couple of years to not freak out the market, or they need to get more of this transition behind them before they IPO. Otherwise, they're going to get slaughtered on the market. The market is like, first of all, the market. I as someone who likes to invest pre-IPO and play with things, I actually try to play contrarian what the market thinks of them, and it's worked out well for me. Everyone hated Facebook when Facebook was IPOing, and I played that, and that worked out really well. Everyone loved Twitter, loved Snapchat. Both those companies are garbage. I'm sorry, they really are. And so I look at it like whatever the street says, I go the opposite, because generally they're wrong in IPOs, and it's been that way.
So I would question if Airbnb would ever actually stabilize, whatever the normal use of the word stabilize means, because it has no precedent in a company structure. So it's hard to understand what stabilize actually means. I mean, it's a more theoretical conversation.
I think they have a little bit more bone to build, to have a little bit more meat on the bone for the public offering than what they're currently at. I still think they're a bit immature and are too close to maturity to weather the decisions that need to be made, like the decision they just made on what's better for the company versus what's better for the short-term investor. Because you have to remember, most people are not Elon Musk. Most people are not Bezos, where they're willing to basically tell the street to go pound sand because they know they can get money, because they have a good business model behind them that prints money. I don't think Airbnb is. I think they're too close to it to IPO right now. Like, I think an IPO next year or the year after is without this transition. I still think, like, of the staff change, I still think it was poor timing for where they're at. They're too close to the transition to IPO and not have it be volatile, to not have it turn into a TripAdvisor type scenario. Because I don't think they're strong enough to stand up to the street, the way other players who've, basically their IPO timing didn't matter because they were strong enough to stand up to the street. You can't survive once you're public. It's a different animal. You're answering stupid questions from people who know nothing about your business, but think they do because they're reading a spreadsheet, and that's a different dynamic. And if you're solid, like, it's going to be 5-6 years for a transition that will scare people, then IPO. If you're really close to a transition that's going to scare people, no IPO.
But a lot of their strategic decisions, I think, Skift, I didn't put it in the list, but Skift had an article that they were looking at integrating Skyscanner for flights, and Hopper is doing very, very well on the flight prediction end, and I think is starting to pick up a lot of traffic, and their predictions are really. But again, Airbnb had the discipline, and they certainly had the cash and the availability to do it, but the discipline to go, no, this is our business. That's a little bit tangential. Yes, it could add in, and we could do different things, but no, let's stick to our name and finish what we have. And they're focusing now on the experiences side. And I think they're really trying to figure. They have two big challenges. One is Ed Law's really to figure out, how do we communicate and find that family traveler to go, we've got the perfect spot for you right here. I mean, because if you could have found that room that was around wherever, again, my daughter's doing a thing in Charleston, and Tim did not come through with, whatever, a half dozen comp rooms for my daughter's little girls getaway bachelorette party.
And you weren't even subtle about the request. You were flat out just asking, and then he still didn't come through. I don't understand.
Well, to be fair,
I thought he offered.
He offered prior to that hotel becoming the number 2 luxury hotel in the United States.
Oh. And he may have known. Yeah, he may have known. But but they're staying in a. Actually, I think they went VRBO, right? So it's not really Airbnb, but VRBO. They found a really cool place, and it's not like out on the beach. They're going Charleston. It's kind of upstairs. I don't know if it was multiple units put together or whatever, but it's going to be great. And they had people's reviews that said this was perfect for our bachelorette of whatever it was, 9 people or whatever, whatever they were doing. And it's just like they're paying a premium. They're paying more than they could have stayed at. Probably not Belmond would have probably been more, but some of the other ones, certainly lots of hotel options which would have been lesser. And they went with the unique experience, which tying back actually again to the Hedna thing was a guy from NTT, kind of tech provider was talking, said, customers are not loyal to brands; they're loyal to experiences and travel. That is the bottom.
Nice.
Yep,
I like
that is the future, right?
Yep.
So
we stayed. When I was on vacation last week, we rented a house in Santa Fe through VRBO, and I'm not a big fan of the host communication in Airbnb, which is one of the reasons I don't use it all that much. I find that the communication with Airbnb hosts is awfully fiddly. Like, there are super hosts. They want to know too much. I mean, honestly, I just want to stay there, right? I'm only going to be there 2 nights, right. Whatever. I just don't need to know all of this. And I actually got a poor review on an Airbnb stay because because really I did not suck up to the host enough. And that kind of stuff, get away from me. I mean,
Uber has that same problem. My wife has a horrible Uber rating because she doesn't want to talk to the driver. She just wants to be driven.
Right.
I just find that social aspect to be intrusive, and I don't think it's a function of my age. No. I think it's a function of. I mean, I couldn't believe this woman gave me a bad review. Her apartment was great. I actually left a nice review about the actual apartment. It's clean, spotless. She was very thoughtful in what she left. But man, she just was touching base with me every day. And she said, I just wasn't responsive enough. She didn't say I trashed her apartment, any sort of the typical
stuff. You got a low
stuff.
review for not being responsive enough. Wow.
Well, as a traveler.
Yeah, I balance now because I do use Airbnb compared to just doing hotels, and I balance it with the fact that I use Airbnb, one for inventory type, to Robert's point, and the other is their sensitivity is slow, so you usually can grab a quick good rate before the market compression, because obviously you have people running compression for hotels, and that's it. Because to the other end of it, I've had where the host just wanted to be my best friend, and I'm like, I'm not here to be your best friend. I'm here to give you money to have an accommodation so I can do my whatever I'm here for and leave. And I'm not here to go over and make buddies with you. And I haven't got any negative reviews yet, but I certainly know that I'm sure they didn't leave conversation with you going, oh, yeah, I hope he comes back. I'm sure they're like, yeah, well, that's just...
I didn't even check if I have an Airbnb review score. Maybe that's why I'm not getting the bookings I asked for.
Maybe. I want to get to one of the rut rows, and then it's the one about the followers and bots and so forth that I think is not an eye opener. It's been known for us for a long time. For those who have to mess with this stuff, it's I think now that's become known to the general population as to how some of this works. That I think is the eye revealing point.
Well, and I like, if any of you stopped looking at your email when we started the show, because I know we give it 100% of our focus, Tim actually had another example of how that applies to the ad industry and some of the less than above board practices of the ad industry.
Savory, yes.
So I wanted to bring this, because it's a great article, great piece of research by
really nice piece of research
by the New York Times. They tied together a lot of complicated things to actually show and depict clearly this black market on the influence side of the world. But I wanted to bring it because it actually made a point that I run up against a lot, which is hoteliers' obsession with vanity metrics and not understanding how damaging vanity metrics can be to an organization. And it's not just hotels, it's actually businesses in general. I drive the people here crazy because we use Salesforce as a system of truth of everything. I refuse to use the reports as a way to make decision. I use them as an indicator on where I want to deep dive to look into the detail, because reports, I never trust reports. I just don't. I never have. I want to see the underlying data because I almost always find that the underlying data tells a different story than the report depicts. Vanity metrics are the same problem. If you think someone who has a lot of followers is a value proposition, you're wrong. If you think network size is a value proposition, you're wrong. If you think anything in life can be tied down to one simple metric as a measure of like true understanding of quality, you're wrong. And I want to bring it up not because I like telling people they're wrong, although I do.
Yeah,
Really, although he really does.
I bring it up because I want hotels to develop the ability to sense when things are oversimplified to them because it's hiding truth. Okay, and that's happened time and time again in this industry where things are oversimplified. And when you dig into why they're oversimplified, it's because it's the only version of the truth that is appealing. And the real impact or the real story of what's going on is really negative. And this side of it, I just thought was an interesting depiction of that. Listen, I'm sure there were people who learned the hard way on influencer marketing or things like that, that when you pay attention to the size of someone's network, it does nothing for you. Like, and I'm sorry, I actually look at people who amass massive networks who are not famous. I look at them and just say, they have nothing to add to my life. And it's usually right. I mean, Robert, how big's the Rock Cheetah following?
The
following.
Twitter?
On Twitter.
1,500 people.
Yep.
Or 1,600, something like that. Which
not an ounce of quality comes out of that Twitter account.
Hey,
that is absolutely untrue.
No, I'm not saying the followers aren't quality. I'm saying that the value of that Twitter account, because I try to bring it up every show that you should follow it, and Robert immediately recommends that you don't.
But the number of people who have told me that they follow it and they like it because they go through and they scan the. Now again, it's everything that goes on.
The what? On the mute function that I didn't know existed on Twitter.
No, it is not for everybody. It is not for.
It's a fire hose. Is
almost
what it is.
It is clearly a fire hose of
it's
stuff.
Quantity, and there is quality.
No. There is, and you have to sift through it. But there are folks who go through and look for things, and there's some with some very large companies in
1,600.
No.
1,600 who like
there are at least one startup who's using it in a very interesting way. There is one major multi-billion-dollar organization who has people who are using it in a very interesting way. But again, it's just like, here's the news, right? And it's just it's like looking at the Reuters. No, it's like looking at the Reuters feed and
right, but it's tailored towards to content generalization. But for people who not know what we're talking about for bots and so forth, what the New York Times article in particular pointed out was that there are places and facilities, not in a dark web sort of way, but in a questionable way, that there's services are being offered that will give you what looks like legitimate followers, so that that you have vanity metrics. Look, I have a million followers or 100,000 followers or something, and really it's an acquisition. Now, on a simplistic way, anybody that doesn't know about Fiverr, which is a platform you can go and pay $5 for different things, you can buy followers on anything. And to a point, and I'll be self-admitted about this, in the early years when it was necessary to establish pages for businesses, I went and said, man, I need to have some followers. Nobody wants to follow a page that has one follower. So let me go buy some followers so people will pay attention to this page, when you could actually influence putting yourself into the newsfeed. Those days are long gone. Certainly do not actually.
The algorithms are far more sophisticated.
Never buy followers, never participate in followers, because then even for those who were smart or thinking they were smart by using the services that are referred to in the articles that we put the links to, now here's this expose. A lot of these people that are trying to show up that they are these entities, these celebrities or what have you, are shown that they have huge quantities of what's called bot followers, which are automated duplicates of real people, even to the point of stealing their IDs and so forth.
Well, and so that's the seedy underbelly side of it. So, there is no victimless crime. Believe it or not, this industry of selling followers has created a massive amount of victims. And these are victims whose identity and likeness have been stolen and duplicated. And now their personal brand, which in the digital world, your personal brand is more important than ever. These people's personal brands are so damaged that it's absolutely ridiculous. So I very much recommend everyone read this, and it's really well written. It really depicts what's going on so you can understand it. And then, I'll say the same thing I always say, like with anything on the internet, take everything with a grain of salt. Be suspicious. So someone who has a huge following, if you don't know who that person is, be suspicious of why they have a huge following.
And look at some basic things like, following in the world of Twitter. How many are following versus how many are being followed? And and it really was kind of fun. First off, and just from a technical point of view, I love this page. The scrolling and the changes of the visualizations on the mobile.
They really did a good job.
Great.
Parallax, yeah.
I mean, that is just some cool stuff. I'm like, man, I wish my website did that. But yeah, it just really.
Well, here's the funny thing. Here's a perfect example of getting to break a lot of rules. So one of the rules they broke is it's a really long article. So what did they do? To be able to break that rule, they made it so compelling that they earned the next word consistently through this article. I normally will not read articles this long because they very rarely are valuable to me. Yeah. But this one pulled me all the way to the bottom. And it was done through good graphical design, high quality writing, high quality investigation, and
you wanted to get to the end of the story because it was so well written. It really was.
This was the epitome of really well done content. To the point where it's taken. It's taken over one of our Slack channels internally, discussion wise.
I can see that.
Because it's really, I mean, and listen, anyone who's inside knows that this stuff exists and knows how incredibly rare it is to come across someone with a pure network. Because I mean, even like I after going through this went and just looked to see who was following me. I have bots following me. I don't know why they're following me, but this is also why I don't instantly follow everyone back, because I don't want to be in that game.
Because they idolize you and want to be like you, Ed.
Actually, anytime
like all the other followers.
Anytime a New York Times bestselling author follows me, I go to my wife and say, "Does that make me important?" Because I have 9 New York Times bestselling authors following me. Who knows why? But they do.
Oh, they may be following. But they may be following what somebody else followed too, and just go. I don't know. You get a lot of that.
I will recommend that there are good bots in the world, because to your point, Ed, I use a bot to clean out people that are not real people that are following me for no reason whatsoever. I have no reason to be following them, and they're not necessarily real people. I just know that their engagement is suspicious because of their metrics and I use a bot to clean those out, because my audience in Twitter, I actually would like to make sure is actually an engaged audience for a reason, that is a personal mix and business mix, and not because it's some sort of automation. So.
It's not just in Twitter. This is rampant in Instagram. It's horrible in Snapchat. And in Snapchat, Snapchat and Instagram, what's interesting is there are technologies that went through and looked at everyone's profiles on other social networks and stole your main profile name in Instagram. And in Snapchat. So there are people that I know that I've had to call and be like, "Listen, man, my phone book showed your profile because I synced my phone book to this, but this is a teenage girl in these pictures. Like, this is obviously not you, middle-aged man who works in the hospitality industry."
Hey, and it's the truth. There is a Lauren Gray that does music out of musicality, and I get people.
No. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about actual.
No, I get hate mail. I get hate mail
on Snapchat.
No. But I mean, I get hate mail because of the fact that well, are you trying to be like Lauren Gray? I'm like, I am Lauren Gray, and it's like, no, she's the singer, and I'm like, yeah, that's that Lauren Gray. It's some teen girl that has 2 million followers on stuff. Is like, yeah, I get the hate mail. It's like, you should give her your Twitter address. I'm like, no, I don't need to. I've been here first, so there. But yeah, it is.
Maybe she could buy your Twitter address from you.
No, we can talk that. No, Trey.
Everything.
Actually, on an interesting point. I mean, it really, but the whole dark side of the social networking type thing really is all of the profit motive and how to do it, paying for followers, doing this. The Winding Tree guy, Pedro mentioned there was a particular celebrity who will go unnamed. I don't know if you'd say A-list, but certainly highness list, who approached them and said, "Hi, I've done a bunch of stuff with cryptocurrencies. I can help endorse this and do all sorts of really cool things. And here are the ones, I've done this dozens of times and performance of these things." And all he wanted was 25% of the company to basically
why can't you name this person?
spike the ICO.
Yeah, why can't you say that? Like Ashton Kutcher does that all the time.
Yeah.
Who was it?
Oh no, I'll name one. I have a very good friend of mine. This was years ago. Maybe there's a statute of limitations. Probably not. But Julia Roberts, who everybody loves, and actually, I'm relatively convinced she probably wasn't doing it, but it was probably somebody on her management team or things like that. Know a woman out of Texas who does super high-end baby bedding, like bumper pads and covers, nursery stuff. And I mean, we're talking really high-end. Bunch of NBA basketball players, and it's good quality stuff, but she gets insane prices. Hollywood celebrities, all these people. She, kind of does. Not free, but she does all the whatever you call that, the soft goods for it, right? That's great. Julia Roberts was going to have twins, right? And so one of her management people contacts and says, "Hey, I'd like to, would you like to do Julia's nursery?" "Oh my God, that'd be fantastic." And get some information, comes up with some ideas, sends a bid. And they come back, go, "Wow, this is fantastic. Julia loves it. We want, but we didn't think it would be at any charge."
Everyone loved Twitter.
I'm so sorry. I misinterpreted. So what is she going to be, doing some press with the nursery, and you're going to be mentioning that I did this? I didn't think you'd do it, and I'm certainly not. I wouldn't have been asking for something like that. But if she's going to, okay, oh no, Julia will not do that. It was like, wait a second.
So you just wanted it free because
you just want free. Someone who was at the time, I believe, the highest paid actress in Hollywood.
Right. So you can't name this guy who came to Winding Tree and wanted to from the company?
Here's the thing. I'll call out scammers. There are celebrity scammers left and right.
Oh yes.
Like
women
in this New York,
be just as
in this New York Times article, they call out Kathy Ireland. She's one of the biggest scammers in celebrity that there is. She did this like super scammed thing where they would call on small businesses and be like, "Hey, for $10,000, Kathy Ireland will do this show with you, and you'll end up." And William Shatner did the same thing for a long time. Donald Trump Jr. does it. This is like the scam.
Paris
all of them. I mean, the Kardashians build a business on it, for that matter.
No, but Paris was the first one. Paris really refined the vertical of, "I will show up at your club," and she would be there for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour, because she could pack in multiple appearances, $1 million.
Yep.
You want it or not? That it's on the table.
And yet,
I'm going next door. Oh, you want exclusive? Yeah, you want. Yeah, exactly. But you want exclusivity? We're going to put a big multiplier on it. I mean, they were. I mean, back at that time when she was kind of peaking, it was insane money because she could. And you go, was that really ethical for the club? Or should they? And the Federal Trade Commission, again, a lot of this is this paid? Is it you're supposed to be? There's a commercial relationship, but normally doesn't happen a lot.
Yep.
So
Dean Cain, Superman, is doing some type of real estate scam here in Orlando. So just because they're celebrities doesn't mean you should, pay attention to them.
I was wondering. I thought Robert was getting a little jittery there for a second. I think he blipped off for it.
I wonder if his cats kicked him off.
Maybe.
Maybe. I have to wonder why Robert's post, though. Every time he posts on the show for the Facebook stuff, it comes back as deleted because of spam. I can't get Robert's comments to stay. And I'm beginning to wonder why. It's like, gee, Robert, I mean, every one of your posts on comments get labeled as spam. So, but no, to that end, and to say that from a business perspective, I have a couple other personas like on Facebook that are safety net accounts for business accounts. Because, case in point, my guy that I have hired that does social media, 3 years ago, and this is legit, 3 years ago, he posted a publicly posted from his college image of some sort of sporting event. And somebody sent out a bot that pulled everybody that posted that image and posted it as copyrighted material. Hence, every post was spam. And so he got suspended for 3 days from Facebook as a hand slap because he had posted bad content. And he's the guy that runs all my social accounts. All of a sudden, he can't log in. Yeah. And it's like, so, we have a backup persona that we use that we attach to come, because business manager aside, it's a means, it's kind of not a backdoor, but it's an alternate way of getting into the account to be able to handle and manage the accounts because it's necessary. Oh yes, yeah. Don't. Yeah,
I'm covering all the brands that I don't have rights to.
Stuff. Yeah, you have all the brand stuff to it, but yeah, it's because there are lots of
those algorithms have gotten better though.
Yes.
That doesn't happen as much anymore. But yeah, in the early days, as they were trying to figure out how to protect brands and all of that, they overreached before dialing back.
Well, I mean, Getty's probably the worst culprit of this, where you used royalty-free imaging, but then Getty bought it. And then crumbed it, and then pixeled it so that they came back and hit you for violation of copyright and charge you $800 or $900. I mean, there was like a huge scam thing running out there. They were chasing all these people down for image usages that were royalty free at the time of usage, but because they got purchased, then it turned into now there's a copyright issue, and you actually had to fight the fact that you had used the image prior to it. I've gone through a few legal variations of that where we actually had the lawyers send it to Getty saying it was royalty-free at time of usage, validate that the date that you purchased it compared to the date that you're augmenting. So we've had those conversations. Mr. Robert, you're back.
Ed uttered the words Dean Cain, which I must have some malware. But it was just Webinar Jam. Everything else worked. I have no idea.
Wow. Yeah. He has the secret safe word. He has the secret safe word to knock you offline.
I guess so.
Wait till you see what happens when I give the real keyword.
We're coming up on 2 hours, and I know that.
I got to be out of here.
Is there any last of the items of it, since we have just a couple more minutes?
Well, or more importantly, because we've like usual have dominated this. Valin, anything you wanted to talk about today?
Oh, I feel like I absolutely
had
my say today. I'm good.
Okay.
I do actually have one thing to say. Here's how you pronounce my name, Ed. It's Valen, like Valentine.
Valen.
I'm never going to say it right.
Then I'm never going to answer you.
Okay.
Ed cannot be taught. We've tried, but he.
You've tried.
There's a reason I have never been an employee. It's because once something's in my brain, it's in my brain.
And you like to tell people no, right? You like to tell people no, and so that's not a hallmark of a great employee.
Right. I'm honest about it. I know my weakness. Very aware of it.
It's one of the burdens Ed has struggled with, being omniscient his entire life.
It's really tough.
Yeah.
I did say one of my wishes.
Valen, because he likes you, he isn't telling you you've been mispronouncing your name your entire life.
I mean,
okay, that's actually pretty valid. To that end, Valen,
because I'll just say, I think with your last name, I think Valin flows better with your last name. It's actually why I've always had a hard time with your first name.
Valen Perrini.
I think when we met, I had a different last name. Just to throw that into the mix. Mm.
Oh, different.
Maybe right. But now, my excuse.
So you married the wrong guy, Valen, because it messed up the whole.
Messed up the last name.
My brain pronounces your first name.
We have never tried to analyze Ed's brain. It just doesn't work for us. Although I do make the comment that I wish I was as right as Ed is confident. If I was that right, it would be a wonderful world. But to that end, if they want to reach out to you or know more about what you do, where can people find you?
Are you talking to me?
Yeah.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm sorry. Yes, I just started the way that.
So I'm Valen Perrini. You can find me email valen.perrini@nor1.com, at Valen Perrini on Twitter, Valen Perrini on Skype. That's the beauty of having a very unique set of names.
Yes.
Just look for Valen Perrini, and you can find me just about on any channel.
If you're not an early adopter, having a unique name is definitely the best way to go. Mr. Ed, where can people find you, sir?
On social, Edward St. Ange. And you can find out about Flip2 at flip.to.
And Mr. Robert.
And actually, Ed mispronounced his last name. It's supposed to be Stonge.
Actually, Stongy is my favorite incorrect my last name.
Stongy.
I'm not sure what nationality Stongy is, but telemarketers really prefer that pronunciation of my name.
Yeah, it has a little bit of an Eastern European type. I don't know.
Stongy. No, to that Ed, is it Ed? Do you prefer Ed or Edward? Because I mean, I've gone both ways on that conversation.
Eddie.
If I'm in trouble, it's Edward.
It's
Otherwise,
Edward. Okay.
It's Ed. And if I'm a 3.5-year-old, it's Eddie.
Eddie. Okay. Well, there it is. All right, Mr. Robert. If they want.
And because I'm always in trouble, it is Robert. So Robert it's not Bob or Bob. It used to be, actually, I evolved from Bobby to Bob to Robert.
Wow.
Whatever.
Okay.
And that was not my doing. That was just kind of accepted by the environment.
It was actually by the shade of his hair color is how it changed.
Oh, perhaps. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. I saw that old picture of you that you posted. You were a handsome devil.
You know who you look like is Paul Rudd.
Paul Rudd.
That is such a backhanded thing to say to somebody. You were handsome.
You were handsome. I don't know what the hell happened, but you were handsome. No, you're good looking too.
Yes, the impact of age on just the human is a horrifying thing.
You're still a handsome devil. I'm just kidding.
More devil than handsome, but
I'm tempted to send a modern picture of you to Paul Rudd just to send him a warning. Because it's very hard how much you look like Paul Rudd in that picture.
I have to say, back in the day, not many people compared me to Paul Rudd.
No.
I don't know why.
Mainly probably because his parents weren't born yet.
Exactly. Probably not.
We do apologize to Mr. Tim Peter for not having enough time to have him on the show today.
Sorry, Tim.
Sorry, Tim. Yeah. And to that end,
if people want to type in an long URL, where should they go?
There goes with the URL thing. hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com. And for the show notes, links that we never get to on the topics we had, and the links we did get to on the topics we had today, will all be available at hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com/live. And to that end, just to make sure everyone's aware of, HSMAI's Digital Marketing Conference is coming up in 2 weeks now, over at the Marriott Marquis in New York City. Mr. Robert is on the board that created the agenda for it. We didn't get to any of those topics. We will next week. And I now have
been shepherding two breakout sessions. So
and I am a part of one.
One is on
blockchain and marketing for hotels.
No B word. No B word.
No. One is on artificial intelligence. Things which are kind of interesting, and the other one is actually Jump Shots data, which shows that this whole hotel loyalty thing, that the higher frequency travelers actually have a higher chance of staying with a different brand than you. So,
what amazing thought that is. And I got jumped in with I got put in with Michael Klein. We're going to be covering the emergence of revenue management and marketing, which is near and dear to my heart. So it's a fun chance to get together for that. But we will also be broadcasting live from the show.
Most importantly, unapologetically, I will be pushing Flip2 very heavily in my live broadcast, because the only reason I am going is to continue helping Lauren with the live broadcast, although I'm paying to go to help Lauren this year. So my portion of the live broadcast will be brought to you by Flip2. Way more than even the normal show.
So the live broadcast is on again for HSMAI?
Yep.
We will have our station in the hallway.
They've only agreed to let us have space. They're not